Breaking news now, and on this phone call that the Prime Minister made to the New South Wales Police Commissioner, Mick Fuller, Andrew Clennell, the state political editor at the Australian newspaper, soon to be our political editor at Sky News, has broken this story. And Mick Fuller has told Andrew that New South Wales Police received the opposition complaint and I have acted appropriately and transparently. He also said you can't have a police commissioner making decisions to conduct an open and transparent investigation, then suggest there's something inappropriate in relation to receiving a phone call. It's hypocrisy to say that. Andrew joins us from our Sydney studio. Andrew, he also said it was a very short conversation, so keen to defend his involvement in this, Andrew.
Commissioner's a bit surprised this morning, Kieran, at how this whole thing's blown up. A lot of people, I guess, are questioning two things. One, should Morrison have made the call? I have to say my personal opinion is no. And the other is, should Fuller have taken the call? I have to say I think it'd be pretty hard not to take a call from the Prime Minister, although it's up to you how much you divulge. Now, Fuller's claim here is that he basically just said what's in the media release, explained there was a strike force underfoot, I guess. And importantly, a really important point in all this, which Morrison could have used yesterday rather than make a phone call, is that police are still to determine whether an offence has been committed. That is one of the things the strike force is looking at. I would have relied on that if I was Morrison more than making this sort of phone call. But Fuller's argument is, you know, I'm trying to be as open and transparent as I can, and taking this phone call was part of that.
I guess the conversation today has been about the relationship that Scott Morrison has with Mick Fuller, that he was a neighbour, they used to take each other's bins in for each other. Did you ask Mick Fuller about that at all? Or?
Oh, look, I don't think he wanted to comment on that, put it that way. But, yeah, that definitely makes it worse for him. The implication there of some sort of long-standing friendship. The only other thing he divulged, Annalise, was that he had informed his police minister. So I guess that raises questions as to whether there's been any communication in back channels, say, between Morrison's office and David Elliott's office as to the status of the investigation. And that's really highlights some of the difficulties of police investigating politicians. That's why we have ICAC in this town, because ultimately they have political masters, and the Commissioner saw fit at least to inform his minister that an investigation was underfoot, as well as informing the press.
And as you've reported just now on the Australian's website, and we mentioned a bit earlier, but Fuller said at the end of the day he received no more or less information than was in the media release. So it's blown up a bit, but Fuller's saying over a call that was innocuous.
That's right. And I guess Anthony Albanese looks forward to, if any of his members are under investigation, that Mick Fuller will take his call. But I guess the question arising for our viewers is, if it was any old member of the public and someone they knew were under investigation, would they get this sort of access? But Fuller is defending the contact to the extent he's saying it was an extremely short conversation, almost that he parroted the press release to the Prime Minister. Out of that, of course, we know the Prime Minister came out and said, look, they're only relying on the opposition's complaint, nothing else. So there must have been a bit more information out there. But Fuller's argument is, I'm just being open and transparent while giving the same information the police service has given the media.
Do you think that this will undermine any finding by this task force if they decide to not lay charges? Is this going to give Labor ammunition to say it was a compromised investigation?
Well, I think it is an own goal by Morrison, because what it potentially does is kind of taints the investigation before it starts. Whereas if you'd left the thing alone, just said, no, look, they're still determining if there is an offence or not, or even some lower level contact to establish where the investigation is at, it doesn't blow up so much. And I've got no doubt, I said yesterday on Sky that I believe at the end of the day New South Wales Police will find it doesn't meet the threshold for an offence. There's a pretty grey area around that, because although a false document was provided, it wasn't provided for any sort of financial gain. And from Taylor's answers in the House, you get the impression that Taylor or his staff were given the false document. They didn't create it. That's the big unanswered question, which Angus Taylor obviously should answer. And we'd all be in a lot better position after that, where he got this thing. But ultimately, I think, and particularly, Annalise, when you look at what's happened with the state ministers under investigation by the police force here, David Elliott, Victor Dominello in his office this year, police are pretty reluctant, unless it's a very serious matter, to charge a politician. So I don't think there's any doubt police will have a good look at it and then just say there's not enough here to say an offence has been committed. But in the meantime, it'll be weeks and weeks of Angus Taylor being damaged.
Indeed, Andrew, not a great look. And as so often the case, it's not the scandal, it's not the sin, it's the way it's managed that's the problem. Andrew Clennell joins us in Sydney, but I think your story might be featuring in the Parliament here in a couple of hours from now during question time. Thanks, Andrew. Catch you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.